Clay puffed out a breath. Nothing stupider than insulting your sergeant. He hefted himself onto the platform, grasped the 2 side ropes, and set his boot on the center rope. Angling his feet, he worked his way across. "Why do you let him talk to you that way?" Jean asked. Clay shook his head. Not only had he never been the brawling kind, but any fight would be considered his fault just because his mama was Mexican. Let's save the fighting for the battlefield. "You have to put up with this a lot?" Jean asked, his voice low and hard. "Not as much as you might think. Growing up, he'd had Wyatt and Adler to protect him. Until that night, 2 years ago, when they'd stripped him of his future and cast him into a pit. Showed what they really thought of their half-breed, half-brother. Pain and humiliation threatened his balance, and he hardened his chest. None of that mattered anymore. The Lord had given him the recurring dream to show him the way out of the pit, and Clay thanked him once again. On the far side of the river, Clay ran through the forest, hurdling logs and darting around boulders. Jean's long legs gained on him. As soon as Clay had seen the notice about the Rangers at basic training, he'd volunteered. Styled after the British Commandos, the U.S. Army Rangers had already seen action in North Africa. In April, the 2nd Ranger Battalion had been activated at Camp Forrest, and now Clay hoped to replace one of the original volunteers who hadn't made the cut. Clay jogged to a dangling rope and climbed 10 feet to the single rope line across the Elk. Hand over hand, Clay swung like a monkey over the green water. An explosion to his left, and a geyser shot up and soaked him. He didn't lose his grip or his nerve. "Do that again, boys," Jean shouted. "Feels good." It did, and Clay laughed. On the other side, he sprinted toward a 10-foot-tall wooden fence. "They don't call me King for nothing." Bertie King straddled the fence and beat his chest like Tarzan. "You girls might as well give up, 'cause they only take the best. Me." Clay worked wet fingers between the planks and made his way up. Didn't King realize the Rangers wanted men who worked together? "No stinking Jews." King kicked at Sid Rubenstein's hand. Ruby dropped to the ground, yelling and swearing. King threw back his head and laughed. A mistake. He lost his balance and toppled backward. With a scream, he cartwheeled to earth and landed hard on one leg. A crack. 2 years ago, a scream, a fall, and a crack had changed the course of Clay's life. Once again, he scrambled down to help. King's lower right leg bent at an unnatural angle. The man cussed and struggled to sit up. "Lie down, Bertie. Stay calm." Clay pressed on the patient's shoulders. "Jean, go get the medic." Bertie swore at him, insulting his heritage, his paternity, and his intelligence. "Lie still or you'll make it worse." Clay unsheathed his knife and sliced the trouser leg open from knee to ankle. "Y'all back up and give him some air. Ruby, Holman, open your first aid kits, get out the field dressings." "How bad is it?" Bertie said between gritted teeth. The blood and the angle of the leg made the diagnosis simple. Complicated compound fracture of both the tibia and fibula, the bones in your shin. The man would need surgery and he'd be out of the Rangers. Clay took a field dressing from Ruby and opened it, careful to touch it as little as possible with his filthy hands. Right now, stopping the bleeding was more important than sterility, so he pressed the dressing to the bloodiest part of the wound. "Medics are here." The circle of men opened. 2 fellows ran up with a litter and medical kits. "What happened?" Lieutenant Bill Taylor stood behind the medics. Clay's heart hammered harder than it had running the course. Time to play dumb again. "King here fell off the wall. Reckon he broke his leg." "What? You should have heard Paxton a minute ago," Holman said. "Talking about fibulas and all, he ought to be a doctor." He winced and let the medics take his place. "Nah, I ain't smart enough. I just paid attention in first aid class. Y'all should have done the same." "A medic, then?" Rubenstein pointed to the men, splinting the remnants of Bertie King's leg. "Say, Lieutenant, didn't you say you need more medics in this unit?" "Very much." Keen eyes fixed on Clay, and Lieutenant Taylor beckoned to him. No,